Did you know the average person underestimates their subscription spending by $133 every month? I was worse, underestimating by nearly $300 a month and wasting thousands on services I barely used. Today, I'm sharing the subscription audit that changed everything. I'll show you the exact spreadsheet I created, the formula that helped me decide what to keep versus cut, and how I'm now saving over $3,600 annually with just 30 minutes of work. Stick around to see which popular subscription service was my biggest money waster. The subscription creep. How $5 turned into $5,000. Picture this. You're scrolling through your bank statement and notice a $5.99 charge you don't recognize. No big deal, right? That's what I thought too. My subscription journey started innocently enough. Netflix and Spotify. Just two subscriptions that seemed completely reasonable. I mean, unlimited movies and music for less than $20 combined? That felt like being financially responsible compared to buying DVDs or paying for individual songs. I was saving money, right? Wrong. So very wrong. What I didn't realize was that I'd fallen into the first stage of subscription creep. That initial just two subscriptions quickly expanded when Disney Plus launched with all that exclusive Marvel content. It's just $7.99 a month, I told myself. Then came HBO Max, because, hello, Game of Thrones spin-offs, just $14.99 a month. Then Apple TV Plus, because Toe looked too good to miss, just good $4.99 a month. Before I knew it, just $9.99 a month became my most repeated phrase. A fitness app here, a meditation service there. Oh, and that meal planning subscription that promised revolutionize my cooking, and the premium version of that productivity app that would supposedly change my life. Each one seemed so small, so reasonable, in isolation. What makes this so dangerous is how subscription companies have mastered psychological pricing. They deliberately set their prices just below our mental pain threshold, that point where we'd stop and seriously question the purchase. Research from marketing psychologists shows that most consumers don't give serious consideration to recurring charges under $10. It's a sweet spot that feels almost inconsequential to our brains. This pricing strategy is brilliant from a business perspective, but devastating to our wallets. When Amazon asks for $8.99 monthly for Prime Video instead of $108 annually, our brains perceive it differently. The monthly fee feels like pocket change, while the annual cost feels substantial. Yet mathematically, they're identical. The psychology gets even more interesting when we dig into how our brains process recurring payments versus one-time purchases. When we make a one-time purchase of $300, our brains register the full pain of that expenditure. But with a $25 monthly subscription, we only experience a small fraction of that pain each month, even though it adds up to $300 yearly. Researchers call this payment decoupling. We become disconnected from the true cost of what we're buying. Digital payments amplify this effect even further through what economists call the cashless effect. Studies show that the physical act of handing over cash activates pain centers in our brain that digital payments simply don't trigger. When I tap my phone to subscribe to a service, there's no tangible loss. No empty wallet to signal that I've spent money. It's why casino chips work so well. They psychologically distance us from the reality that we're spending actual money. This combination of small recurring charges, psychologically optimized pricing, and frictionless digital payments created the perfect storm in my financial life. Each individual subscription decision seemed smart and reasonable. Who wouldn't pay $5 a month for unlimited cloud storage, or $9.99 for access to every magazine I could want? In isolation, they all made sense. My moment of truth came during a random Tuesday when I decided to check my credit card statement online. I scrolled and scrolled and scrolled some more. Something felt off. Why were there so many small charges from different companies? I started adding them up manually, and my stomach dropped as the total kept climbing. $38 here, $14.99 there, $7.99 somewhere else. When I hit $300, I was in shock, but I kept finding more. Subscriptions linked to old email addresses, free trials that had converted to paid plans months ago, services attached to different credit cards. By the time I finished tallying everything, I was staring at a monthly total of over $400 spent on subscriptions alone. The math hit me like a truck. That's $4,800 annually, nearly $5,000 a year on things I barely thought about, many of which I rarely used. That's a vacation, that's a significant chunk of a car, that's several months of rent in many cities. Gone? Not on meaningful experiences or valuable assets, but on a slow drip of digital services I'd accumulated like lint in a pocket. How did this happen? How did I end up spending $5,000 on subscriptions without noticing? It wasn't one bad decision, it was the cumulative effect of dozens of small, seemingly rational choices. It was the result of companies expertly exploiting how my brain processes small, recurring expenses. It was the frictionless nature of modern digital payments that never forced me to confront the total cost. What makes this particularly insidious is that many of these subscriptions weren't even providing real value in my life. I was paying monthly for a language learning app I hadn't opened in over a year. I had 3 different music streaming services because each one had exclusive content from different artists I liked. I was subscribing to cloud storage services with overlapping functions because I'd signed up during different promotions. The realization was humbling and a bit embarrassing. I consider myself financially savvy, yet I'd been bleeding money through 1,000 tiny cuts. But realizing the problem was just the first step. Before I could fix my subscription disaster, I needed to understand exactly what I was paying for. The financial wake-up call. My bank statement reality check. What happens when digital statements aren't cutting it anymore? I needed the cold, hard truth about my spending, so I went old school and printed 3 months of bank statements. The physical act of highlighting each subscription charge created a shocking visual map of money leakage that my digital banking app had cleverly disguised. While the average American juggles about 12 paid subscriptions, I found myself staring at 23 different services, draining my account each month. And 8 of them were complete ghosts I'd totally forgotten existed. The journey to this uncomfortable realization started with frustration. Despite earning a decent income, my bank account never seemed to grow. Each month, I'd check my balance expecting to see progress, only to find myself in the same financial position, or worse. Something didn't add up, and I was determined to find the leak in my financial boat. I need to see everything, I told myself one Saturday morning. Digital statements weren't working. It was too easy to scroll past charges without truly registering them, so I printed 3 months of statements and grabbed a highlighter. There's something psychologically powerful about physically marking each charge on paper. Research shows that reviewing physical statements makes consumers significantly more aware of their spending compared to digital statements, where charges feel less tangible and can hide in plain sight. As I highlighted each subscription charge, a pattern emerged, a pattern far more extensive than I'd anticipated. The first round of highlighting caught all the obvious subscriptions, the streaming services I'd mentioned earlier, my gym membership, and some productivity apps. 15 subscriptions in total, already more than I'd expected. But as I kept reviewing the statements more carefully, I spotted smaller, unfamiliar charges with vague merchant names. A $4.99 here, a $7.99 there. I started Googling each one, and that's when I discovered the subscription ghosts. 8 additional services I had completely forgotten I was paying for. The embarrassment hit hard. There was a cloud storage service I'd signed up for in a 1-week project back in 2021, $9.99 monthly for nearly 2 years of absolutely zero use. A magazine subscription that delivered digital issues I never opened. A meditation app I tried for a week and abandoned. A premium version of a weather app that I didn't even have installed on my current phone. According to research, this isn't uncommon. A survey found that 74% of consumers find it easy to forget about their recurring monthly subscription charges. I wasn't just part of that statistic, I was its poster child. These forgotten subscriptions weren't just small financial mistakes. They were symptoms of a larger problem with how subscription services operate. They rely on our tendency to forget, with deliberately complex cancellation processes designed to keep us paying long after we've stopped using their services. I grabbed a different colored highlighter and marked these ghost subscriptions in alarming neon yellow. The visual impact was startling. Almost a third of my total subscriptions were for services I wasn't even using. One particularly embarrassing discovery was finding 3 different cloud storage services, all doing essentially the same job. Each one started for a specific purpose, then forgotten as I moved on to the next tool. The Federal Trade Commission has proposed a click-to-cancel rule for exactly this reason. It's to simplify the cancellation process for subscriptions that is often deliberately complicated to discourage users from opting out. Had such a rule been in place, I might have saved hundreds of dollars on services I no longer needed. I needed to make sense of what I was seeing, so I started organizing these findings into categories. Entertainment subscriptions in one column, productivity tools in another, media subscriptions in a third, and so on. This categorization revealed another uncomfortable truth. I was paying for multiple services with overlapping functions. Did I really need 3 different music streaming platforms? Or 2 premium photo storage services? The psychological impact of seeing everything laid out physically was profound. Digital statements had fragmented my spending across different billing cycles and payment methods, making it impossible to see the complete picture. But now, with everything highlighted on paper, there was nowhere to hide from the truth. According to consumer psychology research, this overwhelming feeling is common. About 22% of consumers report feeling overwhelmed by the number of subscriptions they currently manage. Among the forgotten subscriptions still silently draining my account were a language learning app I'd ambitiously started before a vacation to Spain in 2021, $15.99 per month. A news subscription I signed up for to read one paywalled article, $4.99 a month. A premium version of a productivity app whose free version I was actually using instead, $7.99 a month. A specialized fitness app I'd used for exactly 2 workouts, $12.99 a month. A streaming service I'd subscribed to for a specific show's finale, over 8 months ago, $11.99 a month. The most shocking discovery was a premium website builder I'd signed up for when considering a side business. At $29.99 monthly, it was my most expensive forgotten subscription, and I had never even launched the website. The subscription had been active for 11 months, meaning I'd spent nearly $330 on absolutely nothing. My bank statements, now a rainbow of highlighted charges, painted a clear picture of subscription sprawl. The monthly charges individually seemed reasonable, most under the psychological threshold that would trigger financial concern, but collectively they represented a significant drain on my finances. As I added up just the ghost subscriptions I'd forgotten about, the total came to $98.94 monthly, nearly $1,200 annually for services I wasn't even using. Combined with the subscriptions I was aware of, the grand total closely matched that shocking $5,000 annual figure I'd calculated earlier. The process was humbling. I consider myself reasonably financially literate, yet these subscriptions had accumulated like digital barnacles, slowing my financial progress without my awareness. Experts recommend regularly reviewing bank statements specifically to identify these recurring charges, yet I had gone years without conducting such a basic financial checkup. The exercise wasn't just about identifying wasted money. It revealed something deeper about my relationship with digital services. The ease of signing up for subscriptions combined with deliberately difficult cancellation processes had created a one-way financial street. Money flowed out with minimal friction, but stopping that flow required significant effort. The complete subscription inventory, creating my tracking system. That one-way financial street needed a roadblock, and fast. What shocked me wasn't just the total I was bleeding on subscriptions. It was discovering the psychological trick companies use to make monthly fees feel trivial when they're actually substantial annual drains from your account. After seeing how easily money flowed out, I knew I needed a complete system to track every recurring charge across all payment methods. I grabbed my laptop and created what I now affectionately call my subscription intervention spreadsheet. The process wasn't as simple as I'd hoped. Hunting down every single recurring charge was like trying to find all the leftovers hiding in the back of your fridge. They were everywhere, and some had been there way too long. First, I had to check multiple payment sources. Credit card statements were just the beginning. I dug through PayPal transaction histories, Apple purchase records, Google Play subscriptions, and even Amazon recurring orders. The scattered nature of these payments was part of the problem. No single financial statement showed the complete picture of my subscription addiction. The spreadsheet structure itself was simple but powerful. I created columns for the service name, monthly cost, annual cost, this was eye-opening, billing date, and when I last actually used the service. This last column proved especially revealing. Some services I was paying for hadn't been touched in months. Converting each monthly subscription to its annual cost was the real game changer. That innocent-looking $14.99 monthly fitness app? It was actually a $179.88 yearly commitment. The meditation app at $9.99 monthly transformed into a $109.88 annual expense. When you multiply this effect across numerous subscriptions, you start to understand why subscription businesses have become so profitable. As I filled in each row of my spreadsheet, the sum at the bottom grew more alarming. When the final total appeared, $5,028 annually, I actually got up and walked away from my computer. I needed a moment to process that I was spending over $5,000 each year on recurring subscriptions alone. That's a decent vacation, a significant chunk of an emergency fund, or several months of car payments, just disappearing without me noticing. Breaking down the subscriptions by category revealed interesting patterns. My streaming services totaled approximately $1,200 annually. Mobile and desktop apps were costing around $720 yearly. Various memberships and premium services added up to a staggering $1,800 per year. The remaining amount was spread across miscellaneous subscriptions that didn't fit neatly into categories. The most disturbing patterns emerged when I could see everything in one place. I spotted several duplicate services. Did I really need 3 different cloud storage solutions? There were multiple subscriptions with overlapping functions, 2 different productivity apps that essentially did the same thing. But the most revealing category was what I started calling impulse subscriptions. Services I'd signed up for in a moment of enthusiasm, but rarely used after the first week. Another pattern jumped out at me. My usage didn't correlate with cost. Some of my most expensive subscriptions were ones I hardly touched, while several lower-cost services provided daily value. Without the spreadsheet, I never would have noticed this disconnect. When I sorted the spreadsheet by last used date, I was forced to confront the truth about my subscription habits. About 40% of my subscriptions hadn't been used within the last month. A shocking 25% hadn't been accessed in over 3 months. Yet the charges continued, month after month, like little financial vampires sucking my bank account dry while I wasn't looking. The spreadsheet also revealed a disturbing psychological pattern in my own behavior. I noticed I was much more likely to sign up for subscriptions that offered a special introductory rate, even if the regular price was higher than competitors. These companies understood that once I was hooked on their service, the pain of switching would outweigh the extra cost. Here's where budgeting apps could have helped me earlier. Tools like Mint, YNAB, and PocketGuard allow users to categorize expenses and receive alerts when they exceed budget limits. Had I been using these consistently, perhaps the subscription creep wouldn't have gone unnoticed for so long. The most valuable insight from my spreadsheet was understanding the difference between perceived and actual value. Some subscriptions I thought were essential turned out to be rarely used, while others I had considered canceling were actually providing significant benefits relative to their cost. For those interested in creating their own subscription tracking system, it doesn't have to be complicated. A simple spreadsheet with service names, costs, and usage frequency is enough to start. The important part is converting those deceptively small monthly fees into their more honest annual equivalents. Subscription management apps can also simplify this process. Services like Rocket Money and Trim are specifically designed to help users track and manage subscriptions. They can even notify you of upcoming renewals and assist with cancellation processes, making it easier to stay on top of those recurring charges. Experts recommend regularly reviewing subscription expenses to identify underutilized services. This practice can lead to significant savings by allowing consumers to cancel subscriptions that no longer provide value. My spreadsheet made this review process straightforward. I could quickly identify which services weren't earning their keep. One of the most impactful changes to my financial mindset came from seeing the annual totals rather than the monthly costs. This perspective shift completely changed how I evaluated subscription offers. Now, whenever I consider a new subscription, I immediately multiply it by 12 and ask if the annual amount feels reasonable for the value provided. The spreadsheet revealed something else I hadn't expected: subscription clustering. I noticed that certain months had significantly more subscription charges than others, creating mini financial pressure points throughout the year. By spreading these out more evenly, I could better manage my monthly cash flow. Beyond the financial benefits, there was something psychologically satisfying about having a complete inventory of my subscriptions. The mental burden of wondering where all my money was going each month had been replaced with clarity and control. Knowledge truly is power, especially when it comes to your finances. The cost per use formula, my value calculation system. Knowledge gave me clarity, but I still needed a way to make actual decisions about what to keep. Did you know that 2 subscriptions with identical price tags can deliver drastically different value? Looking at my spreadsheet, I realized I was paying the same monthly fee for services I used constantly and others I barely touched. I needed a system that could cut through the pricing illusion and show me what each subscription was actually costing me. That's when I developed what I now call my cost per use formula. It's embarrassingly simple. Monthly cost or number of uses equals true cost per use. But this basic equation completely transformed how I viewed my subscription spending. Let me show you how this works. Take my gym membership, which was one of my most expensive subscriptions at $89 per month. Sounds pricey, right? But when I calculated that I was using it 20 times monthly, the true cost came to just $4.45 per visit. Compare that to a seemingly inexpensive movie streaming service at $14.99 monthly that I only used twice in a month. That's $7.50 per use. The formula exposed a critical truth. The sticker price doesn't tell the whole story. My most expensive subscriptions weren't necessarily my worst value, and my cheapest weren't automatically my best deals. To make this formula work, I needed accurate data. No more guessing or estimating based on memory, which, let's be honest, is notoriously unreliable when it comes to justifying our spending. I committed to tracking my actual usage of every single subscription for 30 days. This tracking phase was eye-opening. I created a simple note on my phone where I'd quickly mark down each time I used a subscription service. For streaming platforms, I counted each day I watched something. For productivity apps, I tracked each session. For my cloud storage and other passive services, I recorded each time I actively accessed or benefited from them. The results shocked me. That meditation app I swore was essential to my mental health, I used it exactly twice in a month. At $9.99 monthly, each meditation session cost me nearly $5. Meanwhile, my password manager that I barely thought about was actually my most valuable subscription. At $3.99 monthly with daily use, it cost me just 13 cents per use. My favorite coffee subscription delivered beans monthly for $22, which made 30 cups of coffee. That's 73 cents per delicious cup, significantly cheaper than my $5 coffee shop habit. The value was clear, but the real power of this formula was exposing the subscriptions hiding in plain sight. My premium weather app, for example. $5 monthly seemed insignificant, but when I realized I only opened it 3 times that month, each check of the forecast cost me $1.67, while the free app on my phone provided nearly identical information. The formula also revealed a hard truth. I was kidding myself about certain subscriptions. That language learning platform I was paying for? I told myself I was about to get back into it next week for 6 straight months. The cold, hard math showed I was paying $15.99 per month for 0 uses. That's an infinite cost per use, mathematically the worst possible value. After collecting this data, I needed to establish some personal thresholds for what constituted good value. Everyone's thresholds will be different based on their budget and priorities, but I landed on these guidelines. For entertainment subscriptions, I wanted to keep my cost per use under $1. For productivity tools, I set a higher threshold of $5 per use, since these often saved me time or helped me earn money. The cost per use formula also helped me understand why subscription spending feels so abstract. When I pay $15 for a movie ticket, I'm highly conscious of that transaction and its value. But when I pay $15 monthly for a streaming service, the connection between payment and usage gets blurred, what researchers call the cashless effect. This digital disconnect makes it harder to evaluate true costs, which is exactly what subscription companies are counting on. Here's where it gets interesting. Once I started thinking in terms of cost per use, my behavior naturally shifted. I found myself deliberately using high-value subscriptions more often to improve their value proposition even further. I'd think, I should watch something on this service tonight to bring my cost per use down. It turned the abstract monthly fee into a concrete decision each time I chose what to watch or which tool to use. For services that weren't delivering value, I had 3 options: use them more frequently, cancel them, or find a way to lower the cost. Sometimes the solution was as simple as downgrading from a premium tier to a basic one. If I wasn't using the premium features, why pay for them? This approach also helped me identify subscription redundancies. I discovered I was paying for 3 different photo storage solutions simultaneously. By calculating which one gave me the best cost per use and feature set, I could confidently consolidate to just one service. The formula even helped me make decisions about annual versus monthly subscriptions. Taking my actual usage data, I could project whether the annual discount would actually save me money based on my realistic usage patterns, not my optimistic expectations. One of the most surprising discoveries was how the formula revealed my true priorities versus my perceived ones. I insisted my wellness app subscription was critical to my health routine, but the usage data revealed I hadn't opened it in weeks. This wasn't just about money, it was about honesty with myself about my actual habits and values. I now apply this cost per use thinking to all potential subscription purchases. Before signing up, I estimate how many times I'll realistically use it monthly, then calculate if the value makes sense. This prevents impulse subscription signups and forces me to be honest about whether I'll actually use the service enough to justify the cost. Using subscription management apps also helped streamline this process, making it easier to track my subscriptions and analyze their cost per use without maintaining complex spreadsheets. These tools provided additional insights into my spending patterns and sent alerts about upcoming charges, giving me time to evaluate before renewal. Let me be clear, this isn't about depriving yourself of services you enjoy. It's about maximizing the value of every dollar you spend. Some of my subscriptions that survived the cut actually cost more than ones I canceled, but their cost per use justified keeping them. The most valuable lesson wasn't just financial. It was learning to see beyond the monthly price tag to understand the true cost of convenience. The great subscription purge, what I cut and what I kept. The most valuable lesson wasn't just financial. It was learning to see beyond the monthly price tag to understand the true cost of convenience in my life. It transformed how I evaluate not just subscriptions, but all recurring expenses. Armed with data and a newfound perspective on value, I faced the moment of truth, deciding which subscriptions would stay and which had to go. Would you believe that 42% of consumers admit they're paying for subscriptions they've completely forgotten about? I was determined not to remain part of that statistic. My spreadsheet showed the cold, hard numbers, but my brain kept whispering, "What if you need this later?" This fear of missing out was literally costing me thousands. To overcome this psychological hurdle, I developed a simple but effective 3-category system: keep, cut, and consider. The keep category was for non-negotiable subscriptions that consistently provided value based on my cost per use formula. The cut category was for immediate cancellations, no second thoughts, no emotional attachment. The consider category became a middle ground for subscriptions I wasn't quite ready to part with, but couldn't completely justify keeping. The emotional aspect of this process caught me completely off guard. I found myself feeling strangely attached to services I barely used. This wasn't just about money, it was about confronting the sunk cost fallacy head-on. I'd already invested so much in these services. Shouldn't I keep them? It took real discipline to acknowledge this psychological trap and push through it. My cut list came together quickly once I stopped making excuses. First to go were the obvious duplicates. Did I really need 3 different music streaming services? Next were the ghost subscriptions I'd already identified. Language learning apps I hadn't opened in a year, cloud storage services I'd forgotten existed, and a premium weather app that wasn't any better than the free version. One particularly painful cut was a high-end cooking tutorial subscription costing $19.99 monthly. I loved the content when I watched it, but I'd only logged in twice in 6 months, making each viewing essentially a $60 experience. Despite my emotional attachment to the idea of becoming a better home chef, the numbers didn't lie. Cut. My keep list contained some surprises. My most expensive subscription was actually my gym membership at $89 monthly, but with consistent usage, its cost per use was remarkably low. My password manager, a modest $3.99 monthly expense, earned its keep by being used multiple times daily. And while many might consider a coffee subscription a luxury, my $22 monthly service delivered exceptional value at just 73 cents per cup compared to coffee shop prices. The consider category became my experimental laboratory. These were subscriptions I felt conflicted about, services I enjoyed but used sporadically, or ones with potential value I hadn't fully explored. Rather than making impulsive decisions, I put these on a 30-day probation period with specific usage goals. If I didn't meet those goals within the month, they'd automatically move to the cut category. For example, my meditation app subscription cost $9.99 monthly, but I was only using it twice a month, making each session cost about $5. I set a goal to use it at least 10 times in the next 30 days, which would bring the cost per use down to a more reasonable $1. I scheduled these sessions in my calendar, like appointments, and set usage reminders. If I couldn't commit to this increased usage, I'd have to admit it wasn't a priority and let it go. One of the most effective strategies I developed was consolidation. Rather than subscribing to multiple services offering similar content, I identified overlaps and kept only the most valuable option. My streaming services were the perfect example. I was paying for 5 different platforms, but primarily watching content on just 2. By eliminating the least used services, I saved over $40 monthly without significantly impacting my entertainment options. The subscription purge revealed something surprising about popular streaming services. While Netflix remains a staple for many, services like Apple TV Plus and Paramount Plus offered significantly less value for my personal viewing habits. Despite their seemingly affordable monthly prices, $4.99 and $9.99 respectively, their limited content libraries meant I was essentially paying for access to just 1 or 2 shows I actually watched. By contrast, services with larger libraries or more specialized content aligned with my interests delivered much better value despite sometimes higher price points. The sunk cost fallacy reared its ugly head repeatedly during this process. I kept hearing that voice saying, "But you've already paid for so many months." I had to remind myself that past payments were gone, regardless of my decision to continue. The only relevant question was whether the service would provide sufficient value moving forward. For borderline cases, I implemented a strategic framework for evaluation. First, I considered whether the service fulfilled a unique need or simply duplicated functionality available elsewhere. Second, I evaluated whether I genuinely enjoyed using it or just liked the idea of having access. Third, I assessed whether usage patterns were consistent or sporadic. And finally, I calculated whether the cost per use aligned with my personal value thresholds. For subscription services I decided to keep, I took additional steps to maximize value. I downgraded premium plans where standard features were sufficient. I explored annual payment options for substantial discounts on services I was committed to. And I scheduled regular usage reminders to ensure I was actually getting value from what I was paying for. The emotional challenge of letting go proved to be about more than just money. It revealed how the fear of missing out influences our financial decisions in ways we don't always recognize. By systematically evaluating each subscription based on actual usage rather than potential usage, I freed myself from this psychological trap. One particularly effective technique was asking myself, if I didn't already have this subscription, would I sign up for it today at this price? This simple question cut through the emotional attachment and helped me see the true value proposition more clearly. In many cases, the answer was a surprisingly clear no. After completing my subscription audit and implementing my 3-category system, I cut my monthly subscription spending by 62%, from over $400 to just $152. But the benefits extended beyond the financial. I no longer experienced that nagging feeling of paying for services I wasn't using. My remaining subscriptions provided genuine value, which made me appreciate them more and actually increased my usage. The rotation strategy, how I get more for less. Those initial cuts were just the beginning. I was about to discover the subscription strategy that streaming companies absolutely hate, but can't stop. What if I told you that you could watch every single show from every major streaming platform while paying less than half what most people pay? After trimming my subscription list, I realized there was an even smarter approach to managing the services I still wanted. The average American juggles 4.5 subscription services simultaneously. But here's the problem. You can only physically watch one show at a time. Why pay for multiple streaming platforms when you're only using one? This realization hit me while scrolling through my remaining streaming services one evening. I was paying for Netflix, Hulu, and HBO Max all at once, but I was only actively watching Succession on HBO. The other services were sitting unused for weeks at a time while I was hyper-focused on finishing a single series. That's when it clicked. I didn't need to subscribe to everything all at once. Enter what I call subscription rotation, a strategy where you subscribe to just 1 or 2 streaming services at a time, binge the content you want to watch, then cancel and switch to another service. Unlike traditional cable packages that lock you into year-long contracts, streaming services typically operate on a month-to-month basis with no cancellation penalties. Why not use this flexibility to our advantage? Here's how my rotation system works. Instead of maintaining subscriptions to 4 to 5 streaming services year-round, I now subscribe to just 1 or 2 at a time. I'll sign up for HBO Max when a new season of my favorite show drops, watch everything I want to see over 4 to 6 weeks, then cancel until the next must-watch release. Then I'll switch to Netflix for a month, binge their latest offerings, and move on to Disney Plus or Hulu. The key to making this work is creating a content calendar. I started by listing all my must-watch shows across different platforms and noting their release dates. For example, when I know The Mandalorian is coming to Disney Plus in March, I schedule my Disney Plus subscription just for that month. When Stranger Things drops on Netflix in July, that's when I reactivate Netflix. This approach requires a bit more planning, but the financial benefits are substantial. Previously, I was spending about $85 monthly on various streaming platforms. With my rotation strategy, I'm down to approximately $30 per month on average, a 65% reduction while still watching everything I want. I'm essentially getting the same entertainment value at a fraction of the cost. What makes this strategy so effective is that it aligns with how we actually consume content in the streaming era. We don't watch shows on a weekly schedule anymore. We binge entire seasons in a matter of days. Why pay for 12 months of access when you only need 1? The subscription rotation strategy works particularly well for streaming services, but I found it applies to other subscription categories too. For example, I now rotate between different meal kit services instead of maintaining multiple subscriptions simultaneously. I'll use HelloFresh for a month, then switch to Blue Apron the next, and Home Chef after that. This approach prevents menu fatigue and lets me take advantage of new customer promotions repeatedly. I've applied the same principle to fitness apps. Instead of subscribing to multiple workout platforms year-round, I rotate between different apps based on my fitness goals for that period. In winter, I might focus on indoor HIIT workouts with one app, then switch to a running-focused app in spring and a yoga platform in summer. The rotation strategy does require some organization. I keep a simple spreadsheet that tracks 1. Which services I'm currently subscribed to, 2. When each subscription renews, 3. The planned cancel date, 4. Which service I'll rotate to next, 5. Key release dates for must-watch content. I also set calendar reminders 3 days before my planned cancellation dates to ensure I don't forget to make the switch. Most streaming platforms make cancellation relatively easy, though some definitely hide the option deep in their settings. Remember, 80% of consumers are more likely to subscribe to a service if they can cancel it online, which has pressured most services to offer straightforward cancellation options. What surprised me most was discovering that nearly 3 in 5 consumers are already practicing some form of subscription management like this. Many people are catching on to the fact that starting and stopping subscriptions as needed is far more economical than maintaining them continuously. Let me walk you through a month-by-month example of how my rotation schedule looks. January, Netflix only, $15.99, binge winter releases and catch up on series. February, Disney Plus, $7.99, watch the new Marvel series that just dropped. March, HBO Max, $15.99, catch the season finale of that prestige drama everyone's talking about. April, break month, no subscriptions while I catch up on my reading list. May, Hulu, $11.99, binge their latest original series. June, Netflix again, $15.99, summer releases, and catching up. This approach means I'm spending about $155 for 6 months of entertainment versus the $275 plus I would have spent maintaining all services continuously. That's a savings of $120 in just half a year, while still enjoying all the content I want. The beauty of this system is its flexibility. During busier work periods when I barely have time to watch TV, I might cancel all streaming services for a month. During holidays or vacations, I might activate 2 platforms simultaneously if I know I'll have more viewing time. Another benefit I've discovered is that this rotation strategy actually makes me appreciate the content more. When I know I only have Netflix for the next 30 days, I'm much more intentional about what I watch rather than endlessly scrolling through options. The artificial time constraint eliminates the paradox of choice that often comes with too many streaming options. For anyone worried about losing track of shows across platforms, I've found that creating a watch list outside of any particular streaming service helps maintain continuity. Apps like TV Time or Just Watch let you track shows regardless of which platform they're on, making it easier to pick up where you left off when you resubscribe to a service months later. Some streaming services have caught on to this rotation strategy and have tried countering it with annual payment options that offer discounts for year-long commitments. I always calculate whether these deals actually save money based on my planned usage. Often, the flexibility of monthly rotations still wins out financially, even with the discount. The free trial trap, setting up calendar alerts. Rotating subscriptions saved me hundreds, but the sneakiest subscription trap was still emptying my wallet without me noticing. Remember those free trials you signed up for? Companies are banking on you forgetting about them, and their data shows this strategy works shockingly well. In fact, a staggering 70% of consumers forget to cancel free trials before being charged. I discovered this statistic the hard way when I found multiple free trials silently draining my bank account for months. Let's be honest about what free trials really are. They're not generous offerings from companies wanting you to test their products. They're carefully designed conversion tools. That 7-day streaming trial or 30-day software demo isn't primarily about giving you a sample. It's about getting your payment information into their system. Companies know that once you've entered your credit card, inertia and forgetfulness become their most powerful sales tools. I'll never forget the day I discovered 6 different free trials that had mysteriously transformed into paid subscriptions. There was the premium photo editing app I tried for a project and completely forgot about, the meditation service I used exactly twice, and even a specialized cooking tutorial platform I signed up for to learn one specific recipe. Each of these trials had been silently charging me for months. In one case, nearly a year. What made this particularly frustrating was that I considered myself financially aware. I tracked my major expenses and budgeted carefully. Yet these sneaky little charges flew completely under my radar because they were designed to be forgettable. The companies weren't doing anything illegal. The terms were all spelled out in the fine print I hurriedly agreed to. They were simply capitalizing on human psychology. After this expensive lesson, I developed a foolproof system to make sure I'd never fall into the free trial trap again. The cornerstone of this system is setting up calendar alerts the moment I sign up for any trial. Not just one reminder, but a strategic series of them. Here's exactly how I structure these alerts. First, I set a reminder for 3 days before the trial expires. This gives me enough time to thoroughly evaluate the service and decide whether it provides sufficient value to justify becoming a paid subscriber. I'm not rushed into a last-minute decision, and I can take time to compare alternatives if needed. Next, I set a second alert for the day before expiration. This serves as my final decision deadline. By this point, I must have made up my mind about keeping or canceling the service. No more procrastinating or putting off the decision. Finally, I create a day of expiration alert as my emergency backup. If somehow I missed my previous reminders, this final alert ensures I don't miss the cancellation window. This three-tiered approach has proven remarkably effective at preventing unwanted charges. But I don't just include basic reminders in these calendar alerts. I've learned to add specific cancellation instructions to each one. This includes the exact website URL where I need to go to cancel, any account credentials I might need, stored securely of course, phone numbers if cancellation requires calling customer service, and notes about potential retention offers I might encounter during the cancellation process. The genius of this system is that it removes all the friction from the cancellation process. When my reminder pops up, I don't have to hunt around for how to cancel or waste time figuring out login details. Everything I need is right there in the alert, making it as painless as possible to follow through. During the free trial period itself, I've also developed a methodical evaluation process. I track my actual usage of the service, noting how frequently I use it and what specific value it provides. I apply my cost per use formula to estimate whether the service would be worth its price if I were paying. I also make notes about any features I find particularly useful or any limitations that might make the service less valuable for my needs. This evaluation has saved me countless dollars because it forces me to be honest about how much I'm actually using a service versus how much I think I'll use it. That fitness app with the amazing features? If I only opened it twice during the 2-week trial, I'm probably not going to suddenly become a daily user once I'm paying for it. One of my strictest new rules is never signing up for a free trial without having a clear exit strategy. Before I enter my payment information, I make sure I understand exactly how to cancel and what the deadline is. If a service makes it difficult to find cancellation information, that's actually a red flag for me. It suggests they're counting on making cancellation just difficult enough that I won't bother. This approach has been particularly valuable given what's happening with the FTC. They've proposed a click to cancel rule that would make it as easy to cancel a subscription as it is to sign up. While this rule is expected to take effect in January 2025, companies are currently required to provide a straightforward cancellation process. However, many still design their systems to maximize conversion by making cancellation just complicated enough to discourage users from following through. Many subscription services have surprisingly different cancellation policies. Some require an actual phone call to customer service, which is often a retention specialist trained to keep you subscribed, while others allow online cancellation through their websites or apps. Knowing these differences in advance helps me plan accordingly and avoid unpleasant surprises when it's time to cancel. I've also discovered some helpful tools that make managing free trials even easier. Apps like Rocket Money and Trim can track subscriptions and send reminders about upcoming charges. These services have become valuable allies in my battle against unexpected subscription fees, providing an extra layer of protection beyond my calendar alerts. My new system completely transformed my relationship with free trials. I still use them. They're a great way to test services before committing, but I'm no longer paying for trials I forgot to cancel. In the past 6 months alone, I estimate I've saved over $300 by properly managing free trials. That's money that used to silently leak from my account every month. The psychological benefit has been just as valuable as the financial one. There's a certain peace of mind that comes from knowing you're in control of your subscriptions, rather than the other way around. I no longer experience that sinking feeling of discovering an unexpected negotiation playbook, getting better deals on must-have subscriptions. Free trial management saved me hundreds, but my biggest subscription revelation came when I discovered the secret department that exists at nearly every company you pay monthly. It's called retention team, and knowing how to speak their language slashed my remaining subscription costs by 30% with just a few phone calls. After purging the subscriptions I didn't need and setting up my rotation system, I still had several services I genuinely used and valued regularly. But I wondered, did I have to pay full price for these must-haves? That's when I discovered something fascinating. Subscription prices aren't fixed. They're starting points for negotiations most people never attempt. I'll admit, I was initially hesitant to try negotiating. The thought of calling up customer service and haggling over prices made me uncomfortable. Who was I to ask for a discount? What if they said no? The fear of rejection and awkwardness kept me paying full price for months. Then I stumbled across research showing that companies spend 5 times more to acquire a new customer than to retain an existing one. This completely changed my perspective. These weren't charity cases I was pleading with. These were businesses that had financial incentives to keep me around. My breakthrough came when I learned about retention teams. Nearly every subscription service has a dedicated department whose sole purpose is preventing cancellations. Their job literally depends on keeping customers subscribed, and they're often authorized to offer substantial discounts to accomplish this. Armed with this knowledge, I developed a simple but effective negotiation strategy. First, I'd research competitor pricing and special offers. Then I'd call customer service with a simple script. I've been a loyal customer for X months, years, but I'm considering canceling because of budget constraints. I really value your service, but I noticed is offering a similar package for Y die less. Is there anything you can do to help me stay with you? The results were mind-blowing. When I called my streaming service that I was paying $15.99 monthly for, the initial representative couldn't offer much help. But when I politely mentioned I might need to cancel, I was immediately transferred to their customer retention specialist. Within minutes, they offered me 50% off for the next 6 months, saving me nearly $48 without losing any features. My cloud storage provider was even more generous. After mentioning I was considering switching to their competitor's cheaper plan, they offered me an annual discount that effectively lowered my monthly rate by 40%, all from a single 10-minute phone call. What surprised me most was how easy these conversations were once I got over my initial anxiety. The representatives weren't annoyed by my requests. They expected them. In fact, many seemed to have pre-approved discount offers they could apply with minimal authorization. The key to successful negotiation isn't being aggressive or demanding. It's about being polite, but firm. I always start by expressing genuine appreciation for the service, which sets a collaborative rather than confrontational tone. When I say, I'm thinking about canceling my service because I can't keep up with my monthly bill anymore, what can you do to help me out? It invites the representative to become my ally in finding a solution. Your customer history is powerful leverage in these conversations. When I mentioned being a loyal subscriber with perfect payment records, representatives were notably more receptive to offering discounts. One customer service agent literally told me, "I see you've been with us for over 2 years without any late payments. Let me see what special offers I can apply to your account." Another negotiation tactic that worked surprisingly well was expressing my intent to cancel without actually doing so. Many subscription services have automated retention systems that kick in when you click the cancel button on their website. In several cases, I discovered that simply navigating to the cancellation page triggered automatic discount offers before I even spoke to anyone. For example, when I clicked Cancel Subscription on a premium news service, a pop-up immediately offered me 60% off for 3 months to stay. No phone call or negotiation required. This same approach worked with multiple services, revealing that many companies have built-in discount systems designed to retain customers at the moment they consider leaving. Timing matters too. I found that negotiating near the end of billing cycles or when promotional periods were about to expire gave me more leverage. Companies are more willing to offer deals when they sense you're at a natural decision point. I now set calendar reminders for 1 week before any promotional rate expires, giving me time to negotiate a new deal or plan my cancellation. Another effective approach is negotiating during major life changes. When I mentioned I was reassessing all my expenses due to changes in my financial situation, representatives seemed to have special discretion to offer better deals. This wasn't dishonest. I was genuinely reassessing my spending, but framing it this way opened doors to better offers. The most successful negotiations happened when I had done my homework on competitive offers. Before calling my internet provider, I researched exactly what their competitors were offering new customers. When I mentioned these specific packages and prices, the representative immediately offered to match them, saving me $25 monthly without changing my service level. Of course, negotiation takes time and effort. Some calls required multiple transfers or follow-ups, but considering the financial impact, the time investment was minimal compared to the returns. In total, my negotiation efforts reduced my remaining subscription costs by about 30%, saving me hundreds of dollars annually for services I would have paid for anyway. I also discovered that some discounts are easier to get than others. Streaming services and internet providers were generally the most willing to negotiate, while software subscriptions were sometimes less flexible. However, even with less flexible services, I often found success by asking about annual payment discounts or bundling options. A useful negotiation tactic was addressing payment concerns directly. I learned that companies are particularly motivated to work with customers who mention potential payment issues, as research shows that 53% of consumers are more likely to unsubscribe due to payment problems. When I mentioned that I was reviewing all my monthly charges to ensure I could continue making on-time payments, representatives seemed to have special discount codes readily available. Not every negotiation was successful, of course. Some companies truly have fixed pricing models with little wiggle room. But even those unsuccessful attempts cost me nothing more than a few minutes of my time. And the successes more than made up for the occasional rejection. An unexpected benefit of these negotiations was learning about features or service tiers I hadn't considered. During one call, a representative suggested downgrading to a slightly less premium tier that still included all the features I actually used, saving me money without sacrificing what mattered to me. One word of caution: always mark your calendar for when promotional rates expire. Many companies offer fantastic short-term discounts, expecting that customers will forget when the regular pricing kicks back in. I set reminders 1 week before any promotional period ends, giving me time to either negotiate an extension or cancel the service. The psychological impact of these successful negotiations extended far beyond subscription services. Once I realized how much room there was to negotiate these seemingly fixed expenses, I began applying the same principles to other areas of my financial life. From insurance premiums to credit card interest rates, I discovered that many so-called set prices were actually quite flexible for customers willing to ask for better terms. The financial and psychological transformation. The psychological impact of successfully negotiating my subscription costs went way beyond saving a few dollars each month. What I never expected was how taking back control of my subscription spending would completely rewire my brain when it came to money. The financial freedom I gained from cutting those $3,600 in annual costs was just the beginning of a much deeper transformation. Money in electronic form is much more difficult for our brains to track than physical cash. Financial psychologist Mary Gresham confirms this disconnect leads many of us to overspend without realizing it. I was living proof of this phenomenon. Each subscription seemed so small and insignificant on its own, but together they were silently draining my finances while I remained oblivious. The moment I took control of my subscription spending, something unexpected happened. I started questioning every dollar that left my account, not just subscription fees. That $5 coffee I bought without thinking? Now I evaluated whether it delivered $5 worth of value. Those impulse Amazon purchases that seemed so essential, I began asking myself if they were truly worth the price tag. This heightened awareness extended beyond simple yes-no purchasing decisions. I found myself analyzing the value proposition of everything in my life. Was my apartment worth the rent I was paying compared to other options? Did my car insurance provide enough value for the premium? These weren't questions I had seriously considered before my subscription wake-up call. The psychological relief of knowing exactly what I was paying for was enormous. Before my audit, I lived with this constant, low-grade financial anxiety. Even when I wasn't actively thinking about money, there was always this nagging feeling that I wasn't in control of my finances. That sensation disappeared once I cleared out the subscription clutter and understood where every dollar was going. This newfound clarity reduced my financial anxiety significantly. Research confirms this isn't just my experience. Studies show that consumers who actively manage their subscriptions report lower levels of financial stress. When you know exactly what's coming out of your account and why, you eliminate the dread of checking your bank balance. I was also shocked to discover I was part of the 42% of consumers who forget about subscriptions they no longer use. Breaking free from this statistic felt empowering. No longer was I passively letting companies siphon money from my account for services providing zero value. I became an active participant in my financial life rather than a passive consumer being marketed to. What started with subscriptions soon expanded to all areas of my spending. I developed a concept I now call intentional consumption, making conscious choices about where my money goes based on the actual value received rather than convenience or habit. This approach is much more fulfilling than mindlessly spending. The small financial wins from cutting unnecessary subscriptions created a positive feedback loop. Each service I canceled or negotiated down validated my new approach and encouraged me to look for other opportunities to optimize my finances. These small victories accumulated into significant changes in my overall financial health. Consider this. By saving $300 monthly on subscriptions, I suddenly had the option to increase my retirement contributions, build an emergency fund faster, or pay down high-interest debt. The impact extends far beyond just having more spending money. It creates options and resilience in your financial life. I also realized how the subscription economy, projected to reach $1.5 trillion by 2025, had subtly changed my relationship with ownership. Instead of buying things outright, I was renting access to services month after month. This shift meant I was continually paying for things without building equity or ownership. For some services, this made sense. For others, it was financial quicksand. The process of cutting subscriptions forced me to confront my consumption habits honestly. Did I really need premium versions of apps I barely used? Was I subscribing to services out of FOMO rather than genuine need? These questions led to uncomfortable but necessary realizations about how marketing had influenced my spending decisions. Perhaps most importantly, I developed a clearer understanding of what genuinely brought value to my life versus what I thought should bring value. That meditation app I kept paying for but never used? It represented who I wanted to be rather than who I actually was. Canceling it wasn't admitting defeat. It was acknowledging reality and redirecting resources to things that truly mattered to me. This entire experience reshaped how I view recurring expenses. Before, I saw them as fixed costs I couldn't control. Now I recognize most recurring expenses have flexibility, whether through negotiation, finding alternatives, or questioning if they're necessary at all. This mindset shift alone has saved me thousands beyond just subscription costs. My relationship with technology changed too. I became more conscious of how digital products are engineered to capture not just my attention, but my financial resources as well. The free trial to paid subscription pipeline suddenly became obvious everywhere I looked. Now I approached new services with healthy skepticism rather than blind enthusiasm. The financial literacy I gained through this process went beyond simple budgeting. I learned how companies price their services psychologically rather than based on actual cost. I discovered how auto-renewal policies are designed to capitalize on consumer inertia. Understanding these tactics made me a more informed consumer across all purchasing decisions. My new approach to spending isn't about deprivation, it's about alignment. I still happily pay for subscriptions that deliver genuine value. The difference is that now I'm confident my spending reflects my priorities rather than clever marketing or my own inattention. There's incredible freedom in that knowledge. The mental clarity from knowing exactly where my money goes has benefited areas of my life beyond finances. The same intentional approach now applies to how I spend my time, what commitments I make, and what goals I pursue. The subscription audit began as a financial exercise, but evolved into a philosophy for living with greater awareness. This transformation didn't happen overnight. It took time to build new habits around financial decision-making, but the results have been worth it, not just in dollars saved, but in the confidence that comes from taking control of my financial future. I no longer feel like money mysteriously disappears from my account each month. Your action plan. Start your subscription audit today. While that newfound financial clarity didn't happen by accident, it started with a simple 5-step process that anyone can follow. The average person discovers they're spending $273 monthly on recurring digital services alone. But what's really mind-blowing is how much of that spending delivers zero actual value to your life. Ready to find out what's silently draining your bank account? Let's talk about the subscription audit, a powerful financial checkup that can potentially save you hundreds within the next hour. I know tackling your finances might sound about as fun as watching paint dry, but trust me, this process is surprisingly satisfying. There's something incredibly empowering about finding money you didn't know you were losing. And the best part? It takes just 5 simple steps and about 30 minutes of focused attention. I get it, there's resistance to starting this process. Maybe you're worried about what you'll discover, or perhaps you're convinced you've got all your subscriptions under control. But remember, 42% of people are currently paying for subscriptions they've completely forgotten about. That statistic included me until I decided to take action. Step 1 is the foundation of your audit, gathering all your financial statements. Log into your bank's website and download the last 3 months of itemized credit card statements for every card you have. This is critical because subscriptions can hide on different payment methods. Don't forget to check PayPal, Venmo, or any other payment platforms you use. The key here is to be thorough. Those sneaky charges could be lurking anywhere. When reviewing your statements, highlight every recurring charge you spot. Pay special attention to charges that appear at the same time each month, especially those with even dollar amounts like $9.99 or $14.99. These are the telltale signs of subscription services. Remember, 3 months of statements gives you enough data to catch quarterly subscriptions too. Step 2 involves creating your subscription inventory. While there are plenty of apps that can help with this, I'll mention some options in a minute, a simple spreadsheet works perfectly. Create columns for the service name, monthly cost, annual cost, billing date, and last used date. This organization gives you a comprehensive overview that makes the next steps much easier. This is where you'll start to see patterns emerge. When I did this, I was shocked to discover services with identical functions I was paying for simultaneously. Having all this information in one place is eye-opening. You can't fix what you can't see clearly. For step 3, it's time to calculate the true cost of your subscriptions. First, convert all monthly costs to annual figures. This reveals the actual financial impact of each service. That $9.99 monthly charge suddenly becomes a $120 yearly expense. Then, apply the cost per use formula we discussed earlier to determine each subscription's real value to you. This is where things get interesting. Track your actual usage for the next 30 days to gather accurate data. You might be surprised to discover that expensive subscriptions provide better value than cheaper ones, depending on how frequently you use them. This analysis helps you make decisions based on facts rather than feelings. Using budgeting apps like Mint, YNAB, or Pocket Guard can simplify this step by automatically categorizing your expenses, including subscriptions. This makes the analysis even more straightforward and helps with ongoing tracking. Step 4 is where you make the tough decisions: keep, cut, or consider. Based on your cost per use calculations, you'll now have clear data to guide your choices. For subscriptions with high value and regular use, keep them without guilt. For those you rarely use or that have alternatives, it's time to cut the cord. The consider category is for subscriptions that fall in the middle. Perhaps you use them occasionally, but not enough to justify their full cost. This is where you'll apply the strategies we discussed earlier. Can you rotate this subscription seasonally? Can you negotiate a better rate? Could you downgrade to a less expensive tier? Don't forget to identify patterns in your usage. Which subscriptions do you use most frequently? Which ones cost the most? These insights will help you make informed decisions about what to keep or cancel. Step 5 is implementation and prevention. First, cancel all the subscriptions you've decided to cut. Then, set up your rotation schedule for seasonal subscriptions. Next, call customer service for any services you want to keep, but at a better rate. Finally, implement a system to prevent future subscription creep. This is where subscription management apps can really shine. Tools like Rocket Money and Trim not only identify recurring transactions, but can actually help cancel unwanted subscriptions for you. These apps can be game changers if you find the process overwhelming. Another critical prevention strategy is setting up a calendar reminder to perform this audit at least once a year. I have mine scheduled for January 1st as part of my financial fresh start for the new year. This ensures that no unwanted subscription lingers for too long. The most shocking thing I discovered during my audit wasn't just how much I was spending. It was how little value I was getting from many of those expenses. I learned that consumers can save an average of $60 from their monthly budget by conducting a subscription audit, but my savings were even more substantial. What's fascinating is that once you start this process, you develop a completely different relationship with subscription services. You become more intentional, more aware, and much less likely to sign up for things on impulse. You start questioning the value proposition before clicking subscribe. If the thought of this process still feels overwhelming, start small. Pick one credit card statement and just identify the recurring charges. Next week, do another statement. Breaking it down makes it manageable and less intimidating. Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate all subscriptions. It's to make sure you're getting value from every dollar you spend. Some subscriptions are absolutely worth their cost if they genuinely enhance your life or save you time. The key is distinguishing between those that add value and those that just add costs. When I look back at my subscription journey, I realized that the most surprising financial lesson wasn't about the money at all. It was about attention. Every subscription represents not just a financial commitment, but an attention commitment. We have limited financial resources, but we also have limited attention. By curating my subscriptions, I've actually reclaimed both. Here's the thing about subscription spending. It's not just about the money we save. The $1.5 trillion subscription economy projected by 2025 isn't growing because these services aren't valuable. It's expanding because companies have mastered the art of making us forget we're spending at all. When I look back at my subscription journey, the biggest transformation wasn't just in my bank account, it was in my mindset. As one financial expert puts it, when we pay for things individually, we feel the pain of paying. Subscription services deliberately bypass this psychological checkpoint. With 24% of households reporting at least 3 additional streaming services than last year, subscription creep is real for all of us. But now you have the tools to fight back, not by rejecting subscriptions entirely, but by making conscious choices about which ones truly enhance your life. Hit that subscribe button. Yes, a free subscription that actually gives rather than takes. Share this with someone watching their money vanish monthly. And comment below with the most shocking